So you bought an electric unicycle, and you're wondering, how do I learn how to ride this thing? That's what I'm here to help out with. I'm gonna go over some steps that you can use to confidently build your skills so you can get out there riding your electric unicycle and sailing those concrete seas. Now, in no way am I saying this is the official way to learn how to ride a unicycle. These steps are what helped me get started, and I want to share some of those with you. There's a lot of other interesting methods that other riders have used. This is just my take on it. With that being said, let's get into it. So before we get started, let's actually talk about what you might need before you start getting out there practicing on your unicycle. Footwear. The shoe you pick to wear while riding a unicycle is going to have an impact on some of your control. I have heard some opinions say that a flat-soled shoe is best. But I'm going to say whatever shoe you wear that makes you feel like you have good control of focusing your weight from heel to toe, or otherwise acceleration and braking, or if you're really good, reverse. Next, let's talk safety gear. This gear is going to make it to where if you have a fall or an accident, you're going to mitigate a lot of the damage. So some of that gear I want to cover is wrist protection. Should you go down, you have something protecting your wrists so they won't scuff or hopefully not break. Elbow and forearm protection. There is a ton of options out there, and I happen to be a huge fan of the Fox Titan Pros. But my recommendation is going to be something that's not going to slip should you have an incident where you go down and your elbows strike first. Another big important thing is going to be your knee protection. I'm a huge fan of the Liat dual access knee guards because they let your knee move pretty well. But anything that's going to stay stable and not roll should you land on the ground is going to be what I think is the way to go. And last but not least, and I'm not wearing it so you can see my face, a good helmet. And I'm going to recommend something that is full-faced, like a motocross helmet or a motorcycle helmet. Now, when you're first starting, anything that's going to protect your skull is going to be a good thing. So even if you go with a bicycle helmet, I'd rather you that than nothing. Heck, I want you to wear full gear if you can. We have a name for people who don't wear anything, and when they crash, they become a crayon. And you only come in one color, red. Don't do that. Just gear up. If you want an extra layer of protection, you can always wear something like I'm wearing here, some chest protection or a roost guard, and that's going to keep you just a little more shored up in case you go down. So once you have your protective gear and the right shoes, now let's look at the wheel. One thing you're going to want to do before actually trying to learn how to ride this thing is you're going to want to turn your attention to the air pressure in the tire. Make sure that you have the proper air pressure before riding, especially if you just received your brand new wheel. Here's a recommendation. Having a lower PSI in your tire is going to be easier to balance on. It's going to make the wheel a little more sluggish. It's going to make it harder to turn. But when you're first learning and you're trying to mount the wheel and at least get a feel for how you would balance on top of it, that 25 PSI-ish range is going to make it a little easier on you. Now, once you get the hang of riding, I don't recommend leaving the air pressure there. You're going to want to put it to an appropriate air pressure because having something that low, it could damage the rim. But for the purposes of learning, it can be very helpful. Now, if your wheel features air shocks, like the V9 does, you're also going to want to make sure that you have proper air pressure in both your bottom and your top rebound chambers. Consult your manual for what the appropriate pressure should be based on your weight. So let's say you have a suspension system similar to that in the Nosfet Aeon, an oil coil suspension. Make sure that you adjust the preload and the rebound, so that way it has a nice dampened response going down and up. You don't want it to feel like a pogo stick and it's going to bounce you off. That's no good. So let's real quick talk about how exactly does an EUC work. I by no means am an engineer. I'm not gonna lie, I probably looked some of this stuff up on Google before I actually said it. So I'm gonna try to repeat that the best I can. But it's a self-balancing device that's going to use gyroscopes and accelerometers to transmit that in the data to the motor to either accelerate in one direction or the other in an attempt to keep itself upright. So what does this mean for you? When your foot's on the pedal, if you shift your weight to your toes, that's gonna tell the wheel to move forward. If you shift your weight to your heels, it's going to tell the wheel to either go backwards or to brake. This is also called regenerative braking, which is how this thing stops when you're moving forward. And my best guess at explaining what that is, regenerative braking is something used by most EVs, where when the device is moving forward, having kinetic energy, it works against it by turning that kinetic energy into electrical energy. This also can put a little bit more juice back in your battery pack. So if you're riding down a steep hill and you're going somewhat slow, you're gonna trigger that regen braking and it can put a little more charge back into your battery. For those of you out there who are way more in the know, if I miss something, put it in the comments so other people can see. So now that we're ready, let's get started. What you're gonna wanna do is take your dominant leg, whichever one that might be. For me, it's my right. And I'm going to place that on the pedal. Now, where you're gonna wanna place that is somewhere where you're nice and even, covering as much of the pedal as you can, to where you feel like you're stable, but you also are going to have enough of your foot to where you can put input on your toes and input into your heel. Once your foot is nice and placed, you're going to want to put that wheel right up against your leg into your calf. You should feel like you are perfectly stable on your non-dominant leg connected to the ground. And your dominant leg being on the pedal, there's enough pressure to keep this against the inside of your leg. So once you're comfortable with your foot placement, this is what we want to focus on next. Having the wheel tucked against your calf and most of your weight on your non-dominant leg, we now can start playing with the sensation of giving the wheel input, moving forward and backward. And what you really want to focus on is the pressure you put on your toes and your heel. So as I apply a little pressure to my toe, the wheel moves forward. If I put a little pressure on my heel, the wheel moves back. And you're gonna wanna sit there and just kind of feel that out for yourself. And the goal would be, is you don't have the sensation of feeling like the wheel is going to fall. But you're also getting a feel for accelerating that wheel forward and backward, heel to toe. And if you want, once you get comfortable with this, you can try this with your non-dominant leg as well. For the purposes of this video, I'm mainly gonna focus on working with your dominant leg being on the wheel. If the wheel feels like it's going to fall, it's okay. You might drop your wheel while you're learning. It's not gonna be the end of the world. If you're worried about scuffing it up, you can go to Lowe's and you can get child-proof foam, wrap your wheel and protect it. But just play with the pressure that you're using. A lot of riding in EUC is all about the distribution of where you shift your weight from leg to leg. And when we're starting, we just want to have a good feel for having enough pressure to where we can manipulate this wheel by giving input front and back, toe to heel. And if your leg slips, just adjust and try again. So now that we're getting a feeling for that, let's take it a little bigger. I'm not changing anything in terms of the pressure that's on my dominant leg, that's resting on the pedal, and my non-dominant leg, that's anchored to the ground. All I'm going to do now is let this movement happen a little larger. So practice rocking back and forth. And the whole time that you're rocking back and forth, you want to have that wheel tucked into your leg against your calf, nice and rested. Your non-dominant leg is planted, and all of the control of accelerating and reversing is in that toe to heel movement. And just do this for a few minutes to get that feeling really, really down. One thing too I want to point out is, I have the pedal on the other side. I have it up, and that's mainly because right now I'm focusing on training my body to understand how this mechanic works. So I don't want to give myself too much of a difficulty, but if you did put it down, you'll see it's not too much of a difference. So you could also practice this with the other pedal up to give you just a little more comfort and room, or you could put it down, since when you're riding, you will have both pedals down. Now, once you got a good feel for rocking back and forth, try making your way in a full circle. Adjust your non-dominant leg as you need to, and put that pressure on your toe, trying to make a full circle. Now, if you're going too fast, just let your pressure up off of that toe to slow down, but then you can also, when you're getting comfortable, speed it up. Something really important to keep in mind is, keep that wheel nice and tight against your leg. You want to make sure that that weight distribution, being planted and having that foot nice and secure on that pedal with this tucked in, is a good thing, or else you could drop the wheel. So right now, there's not a lot of pressure on my heel. It's all on my toes, and that's how I'm making this circular motion while adjusting my foot. Once you get a couple controlled circles in without getting dizzy, you can also try it in reverse. Shift from your toes to your heel and go in reverse. Again, adjusting with your non-dominant leg and getting a feel for that wheel going in another direction. So really, feeling the shift of that weight on your heel and that device wanting to go in reverse. Do this a few times until you feel like you are pretty comfortable with it, and then you can switch to your non-dominant leg. So now that we've gotten used to going into a full circle, both forward and backwards, we now need to train another aspect. Eventually, you're going to need to mount the wheel, which means this leg is going to have to leave the ground. So let's work on getting this leg, the non-dominant leg that's been anchoring us to the ground, let's start getting it a little bit off the ground. And we're going to combine that with the movement that we just did. So while moving in a circle, we're going to be very careful, and we're going to get used to letting this leg leave the ground. You're also going to notice that you're putting a little more pressure on your dominant leg, which is on the pedal. You need to keep the wheel still tucked into your leg and feel the shift of that weight. As this becomes comfortable, another layer to add is letting that leg come off the ground for a little longer, getting very used to the idea of this leg leaving the ground, eventually mounting the wheel. This will be a necessary skill to build. When you are mounting your wheel, you won't feel as rushed to have that sensation of needing to do it. So once you're comfortable with that motion, do it in reverse, applying pressure to the heel, moving in the opposite direction. Also remember to lift your leg and get used to bringing it up off the ground. Now, if you notice, I'm not leaning my body backwards. I'm still keeping a stable position that I feel pretty controlled on. It's my input that I'm putting into my heel, telling the wheel to go in this direction. Do that a few times until you're comfortable with it. And then if you feel the need, switch to your non-dominant leg and try it that way. Now that we've gotten used to our non-dominant leg leaving the ground, we're going to step up onto the wheel, but we're not going to give it input forward or backward. We're simply going to mount and then dismount. So on this step, you need to remember, keep the wheel tucked in against your calf on your dominant leg. You're not going to thrust off the ground with your non-dominant leg. You're going to use this leg the dominant one, already planted on the pedal to step up. And then your other leg is going to find the pedal, and then you're going to step down. It should look something like this. So when you're doing this, try not to look straight down. Try to look out, because when you're riding, you're going to be looking at where you're going. And as you get more comfortable, see how long you can stay on it. And hopefully, you're going to feel pretty sure when you step up onto the wheel and begin the next phase, which is moving. So building upon the last exercise, now let's actually put some movement to it. So what we're going to need to add to this is input on the toe to propel us forward just to a small mark. Now I know I said don't look down, and I don't want you to. What I want you to focus on is what's out there. And what we're going to do is we're going to step up, apply pressure to the toe, and move to that other side, and then stop. If you put marks down, you can turn around, and then you can do it again. But you want to apply the pressure to the heel so that you stop safely. Never dismount the wheel while it is in forward motion. You want to step up, move, and slow down and step off. Try this a few times, and as you get more confident, increase the distance. So once mounted, if you're having trouble with that sensation of moving forward and backward, you can always find something like a railing or a fence to really practice that sensation of putting input into your toes to move forward and putting input in your heels to move backwards. And I'm only really using my hand to brace. So as you can see, my palms are up. Now some people do like to use the fence or the wall as a method to move forward and backward. The issue that I have with it is there's a reliance on this. And if you're moving forward and then you catch yourself, it can turn you into it, which is probably not a great thing. So I very much like to talk about free mounting and moving forward as opposed to using something like this. That's just my opinion. Tell me in the comments what worked for you. So now you're ready to go a little further. I'm a big fan of coming to empty parking lots and utilizing the lines, so I have a visual on being able to keep straight. How we're going to do this is we're going to mount the wheel. We're going to look out in the direction we want to go, not down. Looking down can definitely throw you off. So remember, look out and follow that line. Here we go. We are going to mount the wheel. I want equal pressure on both feet. Now I'm going to exaggerate this. Sometimes you might feel a little unsteady and you're bent over. Stand up, relax, and let your weight settle equally on both feet. And there you go. You now can put a little input on your toes and you can follow that line. Ride it for a little bit and then shift slowly your weight to your heels to where you can slow down and step off. So again, from the side, we're going to follow this straight line, looking out, not down. We're going to mount the wheel, and I'm going to let my weight comfortably settle on both feet equally. And now I feel stable. I'm going to keep looking. I'm also going to play with shifting my weight to my toes. That doesn't mean you have to lean forward, just put more pressure on your toe. You can even use one foot. Once I get close, shifting the weight to my heels, and stepping off once I've stopped. Now you're ready to turn. This is a little harder to communicate because in my mind now it's somewhat simple, but it might be a moment that has to click with you. And what I've discovered is if I look where I want to go, I start slowly orienting in that decision. Now this is best done once you feel stable on the wheel. Simply pick a direction, again in a nice open parking lot, and look where you want to go. You'll slowly but surely start maneuvering in that direction. And I'm going very slow at 5 miles an hour, but you could also point a knee in the direction you want to go. And I notice too, I shift on the wheel well enough to where I start turning. And here we go again. I'm pointing my knee in the direction I want to go. Repeat this until it becomes natural and comfortable. So once you're riding and you feel stable, I actually learned a technique from a rider in Pittsburgh. His name is Ben, and he gave me one of the most useful techniques I use to this day, and he calls it the gas pedal method. And that is where once you feel stable on the wheel, instead of using both toes for pressure, just use one. And I like choosing to use my dominant leg. And this helps me kind of control, in somewhat of a dampened aspect, applying speed to my wheel, nice, slow, and stable. It's also important not to lock your legs out. Make sure you have a slight bend in your knees. Yes, your wheels might have suspension, but that little bit of extra shock absorption that you have with your knees slightly bent is going to aid. Some people do think that it's easier to ride on grass, and that might be true in one aspect. If you fall over, the grass is soft. However, I have found that concrete, the wheel performs way better on, so you might have an easier time manipulating the wheel while riding on concrete. Something to keep in mind. So hopefully this video helps you out. And the steps we just covered, you can go back through and rewatch any of them to practice and confidently build the skills necessary to get out there and ride. So if you're someone who has some awesome tips and tricks, put them in the comments. I'd like to get as many new riders in touch with as many methods as possible so they can try these for themselves and they can get out there enjoying this awesome sport. And if you haven't yet picked up an EUC, I have some links in the description that will take you to what, in my opinion, are some great starter wheels. I look forward to seeing you all out there sailing the concrete seas.